For the longest time, I believed that creativity was something mystical, like a divine whisper that arrived at just the right moment. I'd sit in front of my camera, waiting for inspiration to strike, refreshing my mind with other people's work, convincing myself that once I felt ready, the floodgates would open. But instead, I found myself trapped in a cycle of waiting, a cycle of thinking, a cycle of doubting. The more that I lingered in my thoughts, the heavier they became, paralyzing instead of energizing me. I wasn't creating. I was postponing creation, mistaking hesitation for preparation. And then one day came where I stopped waiting. I picked this up. I picked up my camera. I adjusted the settings. And you know what I did? I pressed the shutter, even though I wasn't sure what I was shooting. I really didn't. Or later on that same day, I remember opening up my laptop and started writing, even when my brain said, this blog sucks. I forced myself into motion, is what I'm saying. Not because I felt like it, though, but because I knew action, not inspiration, was the missing ingredient that day. And something shifted. The ideas started flowing, not before I moved, though, but because I moved. And that's when I had this deeper realization. Creativity isn't something you wait for. It's something you dig for. Now let's talk about the motivational trap. If you're waiting for motivation to strike before you take action, you might be waiting forever. Many of us creators, we believe that we need motivation to start. We need it. But the motivation is fleeting. You see, the more that we rely on our feelings to determine our actions, the more that we're at risk for reinforcing procrastination. Creativity stagnates when we wait to feel ready, making motivation the very thing that's keeping us stuck. Motivation is a terrible leader, really, because it's unpredictable. It's not that motivation doesn't matter, because it does. It just needs to follow action, not lead it. Now let's talk about the thinking, feeling loop. Many of us fall into a mental loop. I'll act once I feel inspired. I just need a little bit more time to think this through before I start. I just don't feel ready yet. This is the trap. It's the thinking, feeling loop where action is postponed indefinitely because we assume stronger feelings or deeper thinking will eventually push us forward. But it doesn't work like that. You see, over time, this cycle, it actually creates demotivation. It can create helplessness and even creative burnout. The more that we wait, the more that we doubt. And the more that we doubt, the harder it is to start. The loop feeds itself. And before we know it, days, weeks, months go by without creating. Now let's talk about the path to action. The way out of this loop, it isn't thinking harder. It's not waiting longer. It's action. The first step is awareness, recognizing that waiting for motivation has kept you stuck. The next step is external accountability. Structure and support can help us break out of this loop. And finally, the most critical step, movement, taking action, regardless of feelings, and that's the key. You see, at first, this feels unnatural, but once you push past the initial resistance that we have, action builds its own momentum. Now let's talk about what depression teaches us about action. Think about depression for a minute, one of the most paralyzing emotional states that we can actually experience. When someone is clinically depressed, Thinking about feeling better doesn't make them feel better. Overthinking worsens the condition, making even basic actions feel impossible. The way forward: action first, get up, take a shower, eat, move, engage. Small intentional actions begin to shift emotions, not the other way around. And the same is true for creativity. If you wait to feel inspired, you might never move. But if you act first, inspiration often follows. Now let's talk about how this applies to creators. Many creators live in a state of paralysis, mistaking preparation for progress. We wait for the perfect idea instead of starting with what we already have. We overthink our work instead of simply putting it out into the world. We let self-doubt dictate whether we create instead of letting creativity be the act of discovery. The truth is, we don't need motivation to start. I know that sounds crazy, but we need movement. Action leads to momentum. Momentum reshapes thoughts, and thoughts fuel creativity. The process starts with action, not inspiration. Now let's talk about the solution and how action must lead. So, how do we break free from this cycle? Well, again, I'm going to share some of my thoughts and how I've experienced more freedom from this destructive cycle. First, act before you feel ready. Start the project, write the script, take the photo before you think yourself out of it. Second, set small goals. As I've shared before, don't overwhelm yourself. Start with 5 minutes, one paragraph, or one single shot, whatever it is, start small. Third, detach from perfectionism. Your work doesn't have to be perfect, it just has to be done. And 4, which is so critical, create accountability. Join a community, set deadlines, or share your work publicly to stay committed. And number 5, trust the process. Action leads to clarity. You'll find your best ideas in motion, not in hesitation. I used to wait for motivation. Now I create momentum. If I had continued relying on my feelings to dictate my creativity, I'd still be waiting, trapped in hesitation, drowning in doubt. But the moment that I let action take the lead, everything changed. So here's my challenge to you. What's one thing that you've been waiting to do? One creative project that you've been overthinking? Whatever it is, start today. Not tomorrow. Not when you feel ready. Now. Start messy, start unsure, start scared, but start. Because the only way to create is to move. Creativity isn't something that you wait for. It's something that you do. Now go create.